Now, there's a slippery slope there. You can go too far and make it too complex, but we have found that organizations like Worthington Industries, others that use that stepped-up approach, do over time see the same level of compliance, meaning that they complete whatever is required to get the incentive at each graduated level. So that's something you can consider as well. How many folks, I don't know if you all have the budget to, but if you did offer an incentive for some sort of wellness activity or behavior? What incentive did you offer?
We offered was it $50 incentive for actually participating in the environmental testing.
Okay. What else?
We did a $100 incentive for completing the HRA and put your name in a drawing.
Okay.
And then on the other piece where we're challenging other units, not only is there a final incentive for the winning team, but we did increment incentives, $50 increment incentives throughout the length of the challenge.
How do they work?
They loved it.
Significantly increased participation.
So depending on what your objective is, working backward from that, you can think about the type of incentive that would motivate that. So if you're starting out with wellness, you want people to get their, know their numbers. So maybe you incent that. And as you continue with implementing wellness, you want to make sure that that incentive can't be gained. So, it'll be pretty easy for me to go get my HRA and never having to do anything again. Wow, I just got $100. But, I don't do anything with that. Whereas if now I've got to do the HRA and the screening, and I've got to follow my health coach, and I've got to do, 2 programs, okay, that type of incentive design is working harder for me.
Do you happen to know if there's a difference between the rate of involvement for offering incentives to every person that participates versus let's just double it and offer it once and everyone's entered into a drawing for that?
So you can create urgency by sort of, structuring that incentive around a particular activity within a tight time frame. A lot of times what happens is, especially if it's like a screening or an HRA, is that you've got employees knocking on the door like the last day or the day after to see if they can still get in to do that. But again, I think with employees that creates sort of a one and done kind of mentality, which is a problem with the way incentives are traditionally designed, because if they know that all they have to do one thing, then they'll just do it the final day of the window and then bam, they're done. So there's been a lot of organizations like Kraft and others that have been experimenting with wellness. Some organizations are linking wellness incentives explicitly to the plan design. With the state, with the government apparatus, there's probably rules that prevent that. But that's where, if you participate in these wellness activities, then you can get into the enhanced plan, which has more favorable cost sharing from the employee's perspective. And if you don't, you get defaulted into the standard plan, which has less favorable cost sharing. So there's some organizations that are doing that. Some organizations are doing a surcharge, or if you don't take the HRA, we're going to boot you into the standard plan, which is basically they keep it cost neutral for the organization. So the wellness plan is what employees have always been used to, and the standard plan is more expensive. So there are a couple of organizations that have done that. And then there are organizations that sort of carve out the incentive to different pieces. So the first piece might be, in Q1 you take the HRA, and then the rest of the year you can rack up points to get the other part of the incentive. So you're trying to make sure that employees see one follow-up steps and not make it too easy for them to get it. But beyond the money, what we found is that the thing that really matters is time. So on the next page, what we found on the left is that if you reduce time barriers, you're going to get a greater degree of behavior change than providing incentives. And here we compared it to the average incentive that we saw across members in the survey, which was around $100. So when members use our HRA, we find time and time again that, sorry, no pun intended, that employees are saying they don't feel like they have the flexibility to engage in wellness activities. So things that you all can do in your policy audits to try to make changes that give them that flexibility and give them that blessing to go, take that walk around campus or what have you. That's going to make a big difference. And that ties back into whether they think you mean it or not. So even if you don't have budget for a whopping incentive, that's okay because you can work the policy angle. And in the long run, that's going to be more cost effective for you anyway. Because in the long run, your incentive could be your actual most expensive part of your program. So if you're offering something like a $300 premium discount, there are organizations that do annually. More and more people that comply with the requirements for that. I mean, that's a big outlet. So if you can work the time angle and make sure that you have a policy environment where, managers are comfortable, employees know that it's not about trading off wellness for work, that obligations to customers and to their colleagues matter, and it's about getting that done, but they still have the time to do wellness activities. I think that's probably the more sustainable route to go. And then finally, a role that you all have here on page 41, which is role of policy. So the early incarnation of this was sort of, you might have heard wellness champions or whatever, and they were first used to give benefits teams arms and legs on the ground to communicate out. So we're a lean, centralized benefits team. We can't be in all of these locations. It's hard for, people don't pay attention to our emails, our posters, or whatever. So we need some arms and legs on the ground to get the word out. And that's helpful. But what Perot Systems did, and they're a tech consultancy, and they have locations around the world, sometimes very big offices and some very small offices, is they realized that the wellness coordinator can serve as the voice of the customer, which is business jargon, for asking people who you're targeting what's working for you and what's not. And what the benefits team does is, I think some of what you all do is they have sort of once a month telephone-based meetings where they share what's working or not. But I think maybe what's the difference here is what they're doing is the coordinators are actually going out and asking the folks that are participating what they like, what they don't, what could help, what sort of barriers they see, are there programs that we need to be offering, et cetera. And then the benefits team sort of analyzes all of this feedback, and it's not scientific, but it's more immediate. It's from your customer, and it's more likely to surface things that maybe you hadn't thought of. And they use that to make changes to sort of their national program.